Hi, my name's Lydia Lago. I'm one of the Australian Registered Migration Agents here at Pathway Education. I've got over 10 years of relevant work experience as a migration agent. Today we're going to be talking about two different regimes that lead to a pathway for permanent residency. The first is general skilled migration, which is based upon points and looks at attributes of the person who's applying, their personal attributes, their age, their English, for example, qualifications and work experience, that sort of thing. The other regime is the employer nomination scheme. That's the pathway that we're going to be talking about today in some detail. So the employer nomination scheme has three streams that you can apply for permanent residency under: the temporary residence transition stream, the direct entry, and the labour agreement. We're going to be talking about the transition stream and the direct entry. So starting with the transition stream, this stream requires that the applicant holds a subclass 482 visa, which is a skills shortage visa for skilled workers who have the minimum qualifications and have a nomination that has been selected for that particular role. So the occupation that the person selects, that they're based on two particular skills occupation lists that are called the short and the medium to long term lists, and they control that process in quite significant ways, as you'll see. So some occupations require licensing, for example nurses and lawyers, and there are only certain occupations that require a skills assessment. Our organisation can assist with all those sorts of licensing requirements. Also, the other thing to point out is that some occupations have certain caveats that put limitations on your eligibility for this particular pathway. For example, an accountant, requirement there is that the company, the organisation must have a turnover of more than $1 million and more than 5 employees. Another example is a sales and marketing manager. Again, the turnover is $1 million by the organisation. They also need a minimum salary of $65,000 per annum. Also, the other caveat with sales and marketing manager is that it does exclude low-level tasks. So a frontline retail worker would not be eligible under that occupation. So as you can see, it's quite detailed. The only way that you can assess whether or not you are eligible and whether certain caveats affect your application is to look into the legislation, and we are able to do that on your behalf. That's what we do every day here. So we'd be more than happy to help you with that. So if you're eligible for a 482, you could be granted a visa for either 2 years or 4 years. It depends on which skills list your occupation appears on. If you have an occupation that appears on the short list, you will be granted a visa for 2 years, a 482 visa for 2 years. If your occupation appears on the medium to long term list, you will then be granted a 4-year visa, 482. So for example, if you're a cook, you will qualify for a 2-year grant for a 482. Whereas if you're a chef, that appears on the medium to long term list, and therefore you will qualify for a 4-year visa. Another point to remember is that only the 4-year or the medium to long term occupations lead to permanent residency under the transition stream. The 2-year 482 visa doesn't automatically lead to the transition stream. So you need to be on the medium to long-term list for a 482 visa to get on that pathway to the transition stream for the ENS. So that firstly, and also what I will also talk about at this point is for the 482 visa, there are some prerequisite steps that need to be undertaken. So there's a 3-step process where you have to be sponsored by an eligible sponsor, a company who is recognised as a standard business sponsor. So there's a whole process around that the organisation who's proposing to employ you, they have to meet certain requirements, and there's a whole lot of compliancy that they are responsible for. The second step is that once they are approved as a standard business sponsor, they then need to nominate the position that they want you to be employed in. So this is where we do our assessment of what occupation you are looking, or the company is looking for you to fill. So it's looking at the role within the organisation. It may look at labour market testing, the market salary rate, and that sort of thing. So the nomination is the second step. The last step is the visa, and that is the final step, which looks at your qualifications, whether you have the requisite skills and work experience, looks at character, looks at you do your health examinations. You can include your dependents on that visa, and if that is approved, you are then granted granted your visa at the end of it. The 3 steps, all 3 applications can be lodged on the same day, but in that order. So the SBS first, then the nomination, and then the visa. Okay, so as I said, the medium to long term 482 will give you a 4-year 482 visa. That then allows you to apply for permanent residency under the transition stream for ENS. So that's that process. The second stream is the direct entry, and that's a lot easier. The direct entry is specifically for untested workers in Australia who haven't been tested to the labour market in Australia. They may be outside of the country, or they may be working in Australia and aren't eligible for the transition stream. So this could be an alternative for you. The mandatory requirements that are important here to remember is that you need first to have an occupation on the medium to long term list, and also you have to have an approved skills assessment and 3 years of relevant work experience. So the difference between the direct entry stream and the transition stream is that the transition stream has that 3-step process for the SBS, the nomination, and the visa. Whereas direct entry, the company doesn't need to have standard business sponsorship, nor that compliance that goes with that, the responsibilities. They just need to be operating lawfully within Australia. So those are the 2 main streams that we have talked about. The other is labour agreement, which is outside the scope of this presentation. So look, if you require any assistance and you want to know if you're eligible for either of these pathways, General Skilled Migration or Employer Nomination Scheme, please give us a call and we can help you. Thank you.